Welcome to Fashion Neurosis, Bethann Hardison. Can you tell me what you're wearing today and why you chose these clothes?
Oh my goodness, you're so nosy. Well, I'm wearing a Ralph Lauren denim shirt, a pair of old Donna Karan double pleated pants, pearls, and some socks, some Gucci socks and some Gucci little kitten heels, and some Mexican earrings.
And some sunglasses.
Oh, and my sunglasses are from Oliver Peoples. Got to give him credit.
I do love Oliver Peoples. You're an award-winning legend in the fashion business, one of the first highly successful black models, a brilliant businesswoman, and an activist for black representation in luxury lifestyle and high fashion. When were you first aware of your drive?
Oh, I think when I was growing up as a latchkey kid in Brooklyn with my grandmother and my mother, you notice that I didn't think I had it then, but I was just busy doing it. And I think once I start to write and try to tell my story, I recognized that I was already pretty successful by the time I was 12 years old. I didn't have like a mother or grandmother who basically was like parents are today, helicoptering and making sure you get to places and coming up with ideas for you. Everything was all me. They went to work and I went to school, and I got home before them. And latchkey kids have a lot of freedom. I would get home around 3:30. They wouldn't get home until like 6:30. So you have like 3 hours or 4 hours to be anything you want to be. And I wind up doing a lot of things as a kid.
Because you moved in with your father when you were 12, is that right?
Yes, I went to live with my dad.
Yeah.
Because he had always had the rights to have me, but because he had asked my grandmother to come from the South to take care of me, she did. And he would ask earlier years, and she would say, oh, she'd start to cry. And he felt bad, so he let me stay with her. But he knew that he was Islamic Iman, but he was a religious young man, and he knew that by the time his child was to turn 13, he had a certain responsibility before they turned 13. So that's why he made me. And the only reason why I went is because he said, you'll have your own room. That was like a tease. Yeah. That was exciting, yeah.
Because he seems to have been a big influence on you, and I had that too. And your father was a mentor to Malcolm X. And innovators and change makers like you show what can be done in a practical way. And I wondered if you learned some of that when you were growing up in that atmosphere.
That's asked of me often. And I didn't think so. But I think you sometimes fall really from your parents' tree, depending on who they are. I am a little bit like my mother, who really liked people and really was a good time girl and party. And then I'm a lot like my dad, who's quite serious in another way. But I was just, trying to get through, because I lived also with his wife, who wasn't as easy on me. She was kind of tough with me.
Right.
She was, I guess it was hard because she never could have children. And I think because, she had to, say yes to him having me come live with her and him. So I think I just was busy just trying to dodge bullets. I was like, but I think, you just are some part of your parents. You don't see that they're influencing you in any kind of way. But he was so smart and he was so cool. You would be happy to let him lead you or be that person you go to. Because as much as he was religious, he was also very cool. He was very modern in his way of, handling things. So maybe in some way, I like the fact that he was so popular amongst many people. And at the same time, he made Hajj 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
Is going to Mecca.
Yeah.
So he was a Haji. And he'd always come back looking very kind of like, like coming like he just came off the desert. And it was very interesting to see that.
I saw a photograph of him. He did look really cool.
Yeah, he's cool. Yeah. And when Yul Brynner came along, everyone used to say to my father, God, because my father had a bald head. He cut all his hair off. He had hair, but he liked having a shaved head. And he has very similar features. And they said, you know that Yul Brynner guy, he looks a lot like you. And my father said, oh my God, if another person says that. And believe it or not, because of that, I watched the 10 Commandments the other night. Just so I could watch Yul Brynner. Oh, it's so funny.
That's hilarious, God. And do you remember a time in your life when you found a piece of clothing that made you feel different?
Whoa. A piece of clothing that made me feel different to what? Like,
or say, rather than feeling different, maybe feeling yourself, your true self, like your identity.
I think Issey Miyake. I don't know if that's true either. I don't know. Maybe there's a little touch of something all the time. Sometimes Ray does things, Comme des Garçons. I always tend to go towards that, Yoji. And Ralph I like, of course, and Calvin I always liked. But I think it's very funny that you say that. I think integrating into another culture made me also feel something because I was very taken with samurai. Oh, wow. And I was very, very much, it was a big, at one point it became an influence on me, like for me even to walk the runway.
But as a child, was there like something that you became obsessed with that somehow, you know, those things when you're like under 10 or 12 or something and you think, I have to have that because it sounds sort of almost superficial, but it isn't. It's almost like a spiritual calling to find how to dress yourself or who you're going to be.
I was very much a little tomboy. So I can't really think. Clothes didn't mean that much to me then, I don't think. Because I was, I ran track. I was a well-known child tap dancer. Wow. I was basically someone who was so active and just doing things. I did like my mother's taste, so the things that she selected for me was fine. And if I think about what you just said, there was a stripe T-shirt that I liked. It's funny you saying that, but and the stripes, of course, went this way, not that way. I remember that, but not really like, I like what my mother wore because I liked her style.
How did she dress?
Very 50s, and she had a lot of, like I said now, double pleated pants with cuffs. I liked the way she dressed. I liked her style. It was very casual in a way, but I liked her because she was, a girl who went to bars all the time, dragged me into bars with her. Wow. I mean, she just had a certain style that was bigger than just even what she wore.
Yeah.
And so the two sort of complemented each other.
And you saw that?
Yeah, I really appreciated her. I really did. She was funny. And she was the opposite of my father, in so many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. That must have been difficult for both of them, like disapproving of each other. Or was it not really like that?
No, they weren't. No. My Sophie was so funny. She liked everybody. She didn't care. That's what's great thing about, I think I never got all of the right story or the whole story from either or. I could understand. But it was never like she was upset about him or he was upset about her. No.
That's nice, isn't it?
And when I went to live with him, he promised my grandmother and my mother that I would be able to be with them every weekend. So, and I would always still be able to go south with my grandmother every summer as I had done as a baby, toddler, till as a young child. So it was all good in that sense.
And in the 60s, when you were working in the garment industry and you were deemed too stylish to work in the
button factory.
Yeah. And then you became the first black saleswoman.
It was interesting. I went for my first job in the garment industry. And when I first went for the job, the man said, well, I'd like to hire you, but you can't come dressing like that. Well, when you go for a job, you dress well, you think, for the interview. I said, oh, no, I don't have to dress like this. He said, okay, good. So, okay, I want to hire you. So come, but just dress down a little bit because you look so nice. You're going to be working in a factory here. It's going to be too much. And I came the next day to work and he said, you could do a little bit better on the dressing down. So I kept trying. And by the third day, he said, all right. He gave me a job where he'd send me out with the buttons
Yeah.
to be the delivery, to deliver the buttons to the designer. It was the best thing ever. To go behind those doors and see what those designers did. And you had to stand there and they talked to you. And they made you feel kind of important.
Yeah.
Because they would give you the information that you needed to go back and take back to correct the buttons and stuff. So that was kind of a cool thing. Yeah.
Because that was when I think you said, if you want a great show,
No,
you should have me in it.
Yeah, that was when I was then no longer working. That was 2 jobs later where I was working for a junior dress company. And that's where I was put into the showroom.
Mm.
And the guy who was the head of sportswear, junior dresses and junior sportswear, he would put together all of the buyers from those different stores. And he loved Broadway. So instead of just doing a boring presentation, he would do like a show.
Wow.
Entertainment, and he'd have runway. And when I saw that, me being a former child tap dancer, where I used to have the roar of the crowd, oh man, I was like, wow, he's really doing a show. And that was the first time I did. I said to him, by the time I got up to him to give him our samples, I said, if you really want to have a great show, you'll put me in it. And he looked at me with such a stern look and said, where are you from? I said, I didn't cross the line. And I told him my place. And by the time I got back with my head hanging low, with, back to the office, being prepared that he's probably called them, they were so excited because Bernie wanted me in his show.
Oh my God.
So that was the beginning of me starting out as like a little model.
Wow. So cool. I mean, it's just so great listening to that story of confidence. And then you became a muse to the designer Willi Smith, who introduced you to Bruce Weber when he was just starting out.
Yes.
And you said you did photographs every weekend. And what kind of pictures were you making then?
We go to the park, using natural light, of course. We go to the park, we go to Central Park. It was like every weekend. When Bruce is in my film, and he described it in a very perfect way, the way I described it, but he did it even better. How we used to be like 2 kids, just going and taking pictures, trying to figure it out. But Bruce, the pictures that Bruce took of me to this day are still the best pictures anyone's ever taken of me.
Really?
And then we'd leave the park after a few hours. His mother would have us come and have a little lunch with her, and it was very nice.
How great. So he really captured you. If you still love those pictures, that
I really
was
do.
really something.
Yeah.
And are there certain clothes that make you feel better if you're feeling low?
It's very funny about clothes. I never think of myself in that way of being in need of clothes like some people do. Mm. I don't know. Whenever I couldn't figure out what I wanted to wear someplace, I always sort of went to Comme des Garçons. I don't know. I tend to relate to that kind of madness. But something about what she does, calls me, because I need a little silliness or fun or scary and something, or someone who's really, taking it to the next level in some other kind of weird way. But then, you wear a lot of people that you do like too,
You have a way of pulling things together that makes them elegant, like, with the Comme des Garçons that's kind of wild and that sometimes you don't quite know what to do with it. But when I've looked at all your pictures, you do know what to do with it. You settle it down and it comes to life and you're in command of it. And I love to see that. That's real style.
That's what, the great thing of working so closely with Issei Miyake. He was always so happy that when he made things, once he brought it out of, say, the studios, he would always be counting on me because I would understand how to wear it.
Yeah.
I would put it on, and he never had to tell me what to do. So you do have those things where people just appreciate when you put the clothes on, you help the designer understand them more. And that's what you then become amused to them.
Yeah.
And so that's the great thing about that. And I think with Issei, he would always say, Bethann, Bethann, understand it? It good. So
That's so great.
so, because Issei, putting on Issei's clothes is like it's a test. You say, okay, where does this end and where does this go and what part? Yeah, he would always be so happy. He'd walk away and go, okay, it's good. Yeah.
And you modeled in the historic Battle of Versailles fashion show that 5 European designers and 5 Americans, and 10 of the 36 American models were women of color, and including you and Pat Cleveland and Norma Jean Darden. And your show was fun and it had great music as well. And you described this thing of stopping at the end of the runway and defiantly staring into the audience. And I wonder, what did you want people to feel when they saw you?
Yeah, that was a moment. Even when if I speak about it, you speak about it, I think about it. It was still I remember doing something for the BBC and I remember telling them about it, and the way I was just explaining it, I just broke into tears. It really was a moment. It was because we were rehearsing a lot, and we had these 3 days, and we were the underdog, and it started out to be like a community effort. That's what Eleanor Lambert and Miss Francois de la Renta, which was Oscar de la Renta's former wife. She's passed away. But that's what they wanted. They just wanted to have this opportunity to do something that's so brilliant. And it would benefit the Marie Antoinette Theater and the whole of Versailles. But what wound up happening is once the media in France start to hear about it, they start to say, what are these American designers coming here? They're just sportswear people. They could never compete. And they started using the word compete.
Right.
Against our, couturiers. Well, we weren't trying to compete. We're just going over to do a show. And then it going on. And that's when it became the Battle of Versailles. It was never the Battle of Versailles. That was the French press. So by the time they finished dogging us, even the support we had from America, editors started dropping out.
Really?
They weren't interested in coming and being embarrassed.
No.
It was something. Only person I think was Mary Lou Luther and I think Bill Cunningham. Those are the two I remember.
Oh, Bill Cunningham.
Yeah, they were sticking to it, man, because they were curious. But there may be another one. I don't, forget, maybe someone else, but those two I remember clearly. And I promise you, it was like getting there and doing it. I've never, as a model, and I was a runway model, never really a print girl. I never had the fortune to be able to just be that, a model. I always had a full-time job when I modeled. So I, being Stephen Burroughs' assistant as well as his fit girl, I had to pay attention to Stephen. And also Anne Klein, she had asked me before we left America to work with her and help her. I'd go and leave my office from Stephen and go and talk to her about, because she was doing a certain kind of collection. And that's for the first time she knew she needed Black girls too.
Yeah.
And there was a cabine of, at least 10 of us that were going to be there. But Anne was going through something and she felt very insecure because it was all guys and just her. And so I'd have to go and talk to her and spend time with her and, give her energy and then make sure. Stephen was always cool and always together, but he's very shy. So I would, go and talk with him and make sure everything was going well on our side. So I didn't have time to be like the model.
Yeah.
And when we would do practice of our rehearsing time, I would always hear Halston saying, "Come on, Bethann, come on." And meanwhile, I'm just pacing. I'm just doing my, just pacing it out, knowing where I have to be, making sure where I have to stand. That's not the moment. It's not real yet. So, but he was wanting me to, the other girls, that's what they did. But when I put on that yellow dress that Stephen had made, and it was a dedication to couture, the best he could, where he always worked in knits. This dress was woven, and he fitted it for me. And the nights of fitting that dress, of me in the studio with him, I knew it was special. And I knew that us being underdogs, we had to really bring it. And that was a moment I really thought, these guys and these French people and these people think that we're nothing. And who do they think? And when I hit that stage, I kept thinking about, I knew what a great walker I was. I knew how good I was as a model. But I put an intention in my head. And because of the way I look, I was skinny, looked like a boy, very short hair. And all the girls had twills in their head. And mine looked more like a boa, looked more Afrique. And I had this canary yellow dress on with the train. And the music was so good. I forget. I think it was Barry White.
Really?
But the beat of that, just that beat.
Yeah.
I took the beat, and this is a stage. And another thing, we lost out because our sets weren't there because Joe Euler, who's the right hand of Halston, was assigned to create our sets, but he did it in inches, and it was centimeters, the stage, so they didn't fit. So we had nothing. We are already the underdog. We don't even have, any sets. All we have is this bare stage, which is a stage embanked, so it's not a runway. So it goes down as you walk it, and then we have nothing but the girls, the music, the clothes. And, Liza Minnelli, thank God, Kate Thompson's choreography. So when I hit that stage, I knew I had to really deliver. To me, it was like, this is it, because we don't have, I had worked for two others, of course, but Stephen was my moment. And walking down that stage, I was really thinking, I was defying them. And the way I walked with such strength that when I got to the end of it, and each one of us had a train, and we held the train on a pinky ring that you held with your dress. I threw it down and just stood there so long. But to hear Bill Cunningham tell it, because he was watching it, he makes me know how strong it was. And I just stood there so long that they started to stomp and stomp and stomp. And the next thing, they took their programs and threw it up in the air, screaming, "Bravo, bravo!" And then I knew, even though we were first to present, I knew we had them. And that was a great moment for us. It was a moment of defiance. It was a moment of fear. And just being at the place of thinking, we can't lose. We just can't lose.
God, how amazing. Because I didn't know much about that until I watched the Halston series on, the Ryan Reynolds one, which was really interesting. And
yeah.
It's great that they included that whole, he was a big part of that, but it was amazing.
You mean Halston or Stephen?
Halston.
Yeah, no, it was really important that, each one of them, they were such wild cards. It was, that's why I learned so much about being American in a way, how they all were so tense with each other. And Halston was so grand because he was the only one that was really had a lot of friends in Paris and Europe. And every night he'd go out to, Regine's and everybody was with him. And the American designers were corny. And Stephen didn't care. And the only one, and Halston didn't like any one of them. He only liked Stephen. He only thought Stephen was the only really designer, and it's so funny. It was so, and poor Ange, I didn't know at the time, and I don't know if she knew that she had cancer at the time.
Really?
Yeah, but she was really suffering too in her own way because, they weren't being all together, five of them together.
Yeah.
The only time it became together is when we said, showtime. And then that's when everybody's energy, we had to click. And that's when I recognized, they can all fight and be all against, but when the moment comes, the roar, they come together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You founded the Black Girls Coalition with Iman initially to celebrate and promote Black models, including Veronica Webb and Karen Alexander and Naomi Campbell. And what happened to the Black is Beautiful movement? How come it seemed to have lost momentum because it was such a big thing?
I had a very diverse agency, but I also knew I had more than anyone because of the fact that I believed in diversity and racial diversity. It was interesting at that time because all the models were, we were runway models, and then the change of Calvin Klein having the great marketer he is. He's the one who brought the print girls on the runway, and he wanted the
Really? I
yeah.
didn't know that.
You're gonna get a lot of stories. Oh, sorry.
No.
You're gonna get. I don't want him to spank
learning.
me, but you're gonna get a lot of knowledge here. This is a great thing because I tell a lot of people that I said, when you're old enough, you just know so much shit,
Yeah, it's great.
And you're there. You were there. I mean, I was there because I was one of his models. But that's what he did. He saw that he wanted to start making sure that his clothes were were in the magazines already. So he then had the editors sit there, put the print girl that they normally would use editorially on the runway. They didn't even know how to walk. And slowly, slowly, they began to end the life of the runway model. So now what you see is that everybody does equal to the same. But back in the day, the market for designers in the garment industry were always serviced by model agencies that only worked with models who only serviced that industry. They weren't print girls.
God, I never knew that.
Nobody knew.
That's incredible.
Until Bethann told them.
Yeah, Bethann.
I swear, I promise you. I tell so many people, they go, wow, I never knew that. No, of course not, because no one talks about it until someone takes you down memory lane, and I have to explain that. And Calvin kept me, I was the last runway model he kept. I was down to one outfit, but he held on to me because we had a lot of great moments of fittings because I was very inspiring for him.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, we didn't have many black girls doing editorial. So you had, when they found Iman, yes. And little by little, Naomi comes on the scene in the 80s, and she's one of those girls. But we didn't have a lot of that. But when Regis Paness came from France and he started American Elle, he had a real appreciation for blacks, beauty, brown girls. So he started putting them in the magazine and putting them on the covers, and that challenged Condé Nast and Hearst. So they had Bazaar, we had, Mademoiselle, which you don't have anymore, Glamour magazine, Vogue. And what wound up happening is that these girls all of a sudden started having, now those magazines wanted to have those black girls because they had to compete with this French magazine that came in, and he was killing it. I mean, he had no problem putting black girls because there was nothing for them to lose. And it was brilliant.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden we have all these black girls working. Now all of a sudden we have, Vogue taking, girls on photo shoots. Before it was just studio shoots, black girls. They never went on a location.
So it was really, really divided in who.
It was like departments, like marketing. You had black girls do catalog shoots, maybe, but editorial, oh no, not a lot of that. So this is the change. And I started watching this. Now, of course, these girls don't know the history of Bethann and the girls that were runway models. This had never happened before, to see this many girls starting to be Beverly Peel, Tyra Banks. These different girls now are working editorially in these top magazines. I decided I wanted to do something, and I had this idea, let's celebrate them. I had my model agency already. And I had it for, now I thought it was 1984, so by this time it's 1986. Enough time for girls to start to be groomed in that world and that editorial world. Iman had just finished, she stopped modeling, and she had started to started going towards acting. She was bummed out one time about losing a role, and I told her, I got an idea for us. And she always liked our ideas, mine. And she and I would do things together, like parties and things. And I came up with this idea, let's celebrate the black girls and blah, 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 blah. And the way I told the story and pitched it to her, she always said yes, but she said, that's a great idea. And I just want to take her out of her doldrums at the moment. And she said yes. And so we put it together. So we had all the girls who worked, and I wanted them to understand what it was about. It was about, just celebrating being that girl, but learning to work together and be models who could work together, be of the same color. And while we were having the terrible time of homelessness in New York City, if we could benefit homeless children, organizations that supported homeless children and their mothers and parents. And So I just did something to just bring attention to that. And that was great because that started in 1988, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it went on for a while. And then it was good. I would do these parties and everybody in the world would come. And of course they would, because all these beautiful black girls are there. And we would make people, we sell like raffles and make friends, and us and Keith Haring and all of them give us products so we could raffle off. It was just an awareness, make people learn how to give back. And I was teaching everyone something,
Yeah.
that most people didn't do in our industry. They wouldn't even thought about other people. And the homelessness thing was something that really bothered me because I always thought I could be homeless one day. So I really, really, really thought that was what was so important at that time. We did it until 1990, 93, 94, I can't remember, 92 maybe. But then by then, eventually, the black models started disappearing because Eastern Europe had opened up and people started bringing them forth. So that's when it became something that I had to pay attention to, noticing that the black model had started disappearing. She who had been so prominent amongst whites, then she started to disappear. And not only did she disappear, just good old American white girls started disappearing too.
So bizarre that the idea that Eastern Europe opens up and there's this kind of coming together of things, and immediately whole sectors of people are just dropped out. And I suppose that's the downside of fashion, everyone becoming obsessed with one thing.
Yes.
And that's the limitation. Yet the other things you're describing, which fashion is great at, is seeing something that we care about, homelessness, or any person would care, and we're really good at coming up with the best idea and the most fun idea and the most dignified idea, weirdly, coming from fashion. But there is a lot of dignity.
I think what happened too with that whole thing with Eastern Europe, it really was something that was so new. And as you say, it's true. Everyone thinks they're individual, and then you watch them all follow the yellow brick road when it comes down to designers. The attraction of all these beautiful, in the body alignment, I even liked. I mean, me and Stephen Burrows, we loved that narrow-hipped girl. And a lot of American girls, as well as black girls, don't have that same hip alignment. So it was really beautiful to see these girls. And then, the way they were used became an idea.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you don't notice the model. She's replaced even Linda Evangelista. You don't even see Linda Evangelista anymore because she was part of the supermodels and the glamorous girls. So now these girls just, you don't notice them. You don't remember them. They're just becoming hangers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about it. And then it starts to become a trend that it looks like it makes sense. Because, you don't have to have black girls. You don't have to have Brazilian girls. You don't have to have white girls with, that looks like they're milk-fed. These Eastern European girls are coming and they barely have eaten. They're generations of eating very little. And they've got their alignment that looks so good, and they just you're not noticing their faces per se.
Yeah, it's like a statistic, isn't it? It's like, oh, this is our aesthetic now. This is statistic. It's mysterious how captivating it is when everyone chooses the same thing. It's really weird that. But you had this incredible eye for a model. And Susie Cave, who was also on Fashion Neurosis, talking about you talent spotting her and her walking up the steps of the Carnegie Hall, age 14, and you were putting up the sign for your agency, and you said, hey, and you noticed her. I just wondered if she remembered that so well, and I wondered if you remembered that moment.
It's so funny. I was trying to remember this so much because she stayed with me in my head because of her name and her look. And I love the fact that I hear from so many. I'm going to use that as part of my speech because I never write speeches down when I get awards, which makes me so neurotic right before I go up on the stage. But that's one thing I want to talk about is how much I get the memories of others writing to me letting me know how I treated them and how important and I was at their a point in their life. And I think that comes down to this sense of compassion.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I want to really speak about too, because, I didn't go into the model industry business because I wanted to be a model agent. I hated the idea. I got talked into it. And then they found me the money. Then these models were so willing to show me the love they had to do something that no model agency had ever done, which was basically to wait for the money because I didn't have enough money to have a model agency. And the money that I was given was to have for the basics. So this was like a great thing. And when you have people like Susie reminding you and others that you gave her great confidence at a point in her life,
Yeah.
that was really important. And I hear this so often. And one person who, because here I'm in London right now talking to you, one of the most important people in my life that gave me a great deal of confidence was Nick Kamen.
Wow.
And he took a chance on me when I was starting the agency. I had 8 girls and 1 boy. It was him. And he had 3 agencies that wanted him. And I had nothing. I'm sitting in this big open space that I had just found an office down in a place called Tribeca that nobody even heard of. And and for some reason, he chose me. And I promise you, it did everything for me. So starting this agency with 9 kids, mixed all of them, different backgrounds, blondes, mixed kids, and having Nick say yes to me gave me the belief that I could do this. And they don't know if I'm going to make it or not, but they wanted me to do it so badly.
Yeah, that's so
it was
wonderful.
It's such a pleasure. So every time, and I came here on his birthday, and which is always April 15th, and he was everything for me, and he was a great loss to all of us. And we're Buffalo people, so.
Yeah, he was an incredible
so
model. I mean, that advert when he's in the laundry and he takes I mean, it's just worth going back and looking again and again. The wit and the sort of languidness and
the Levi. It was the Levi, right?
Levi's, yeah. It was so cool. It was just like you got to see somebody rather than something being promoted. It was so funny as well. So
it was advanced in his thinking.
Yeah.
It was advanced in his thinking. And I just want to go back to saying something about, to not put too much weight on the designer, but I do in many ways, of how they allowed the change of the industry when it came down to who they put their clothes on. It came down to the change in the industry because we didn't have casting directors before.
Yeah.
Casting directors and stylists didn't exist. So, when I was a model, those things, of course, didn't exist. But the idea of it is that the game changed and then it changes for everyone.
Yeah.
And then you have to help bring them back to what is real. Because I really do believe that the industry, even though it looked bad and it looked like it was racist, I didn't think that was their intent. And that's the only reason why I could approach them, saying and letting them know they had gone in a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And now this is who you look like, this is what you are, whether it's your intention or not. You keep using consistently 35 models and not one is of color. And if it is, it's one season. Whether your intention or not, the result is racism. And that sort of got everyone's attention because between here, whether it be London, Paris, Milan, New York, not one designer thinks they're racist.
Yeah. No one thinks they're racist.
They never think they're racist because that's not their intent. They're creative people. And so when you say that to them and you show them, they responded right away.
Yeah. You've talked about the importance of language in educating people about racism. And the language of casting is pretty crude sometimes, like no blondes, no redheads, no freckles, but no ethnics, no blacks. Sounds like pure discrimination. And how do you deal with that? How do you approach that?
Well, that's the thing that's interesting about that. When I would tell people who are not in the model industry or the fashion industry, the blatant conversations, oh, they would say, oh, that's terrible. And I'd say, but you have to use words. I mean, if you're choosing a type of individual to represent whatever you're doing, your product or your brand or whatever you're representing, you have to describe to the other person what you want, because this is a physical business.
Yeah.
Well, many people say, oh, you can't say, they don't say they don't want a black girl, or they don't want to say, well, in this particular case, a black girl wouldn't work. And in some cases, a black girl would work, you know. I when I had having my model agency, it was always so interesting to me because I'm so free flowing. I had the good news about having a model agency that is predominantly white when you're a person of color gives you a lot of freedom, because it was easy for me to see something and call it. And I think because of who I am, it worked in a way because of what way I would say it. I had one beautiful white girl named Catherine Hammond, who was a brunette who worked all the time commercially. And she always did Brides Magazine. So I always had the relationship with Brides Magazine, and I could talk to them. So it was very easy for me to one day say to the Brides editor, model editor, who books the talent for the mag, you know, you do know that blacks people do get married.
Yeah.
And the woman almost died. Oh, Bethann, oh, yeah, oh, yes, of course. I said, but you never have. I never see a black bride, an Asian bride, a Latin bride, ever. What do you think they do? They get married. Oh, and then they don't know what to say because it's almost like, it's not like they do it. It's like
Yeah.
it just happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or when Calvin, they would call me and say, Bethann, I got a great job for you. Calvin wants to fight, because by this time he's using print girls. And all the print girls, all, you know, they're all white. Calvin wants to find a great black girl, and he wants you to find them. I said, how many black? Just one. I said, you see now, now I'm happy to help you. But you see how racist that sounds? Bethann, we're not racist. I said, I didn't say you're racist. You hear how it sounds. How many girls are you gonna have? And they would name it. And then it was very easy for me to do this, maybe because I came on earth to do it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you have a way of showing people what they're missing, and that's the generosity that you have to show people that, rather than criticizing them.
Yes, that's the difference.
Where people can't hear, and even though it's sort of shocking,
Yeah.
you are very, very good at that. Just drawing back the curtain so someone can bear to sort of acknowledge how blind they're being and how what they're, what's available, instead of continuing down this tiny, narrow path. And this is your gift, isn't it?
Stephen Meisel used to say to me when he used to call Castle, he called me one day, he said, do you know you're the only one out of all the model agencies that has an Asian person?
God, Stephen said that.
Yeah, I said, you're kidding me. But I didn't think it was like he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
I said, I thought somebody, because everybody copied me. If they saw that I was having a little run with something, then they'd get a black girl. Like I always wanted Lorraine Pascal.
Oh, she was
I wanted that girl so bad when she first came out. And I could have had her, almost had her. And just because someone had more dominant kind of model agency, then they would go after, because they could see I started to make black girls work.
My first bit of editorial was on Lorraine Pascal for the Face magazine. Yeah. Oh, it was incredible.
I wanted her. That was one of the black girls that I wanted so much coming out of this area. And it was just so many. I got a lot of good girls, like from Zed Model Agency, that all the kooky white kids I liked. I love a good-looking English boys in the house. I really do. And it was just always so good to have that kind of way of being. But you're right. It was more not saying it, not badgering anyone, not making them feel bad. It was making him, like I always say, I'm here to help white people. And I'm not here necessarily to help black people. It looks like it because I'm getting that results. But just to make them think.
Yeah.
Because I believe in them. I believe in them. I know that they, and I watched what happened when I sent the letters out, that I watched how London reacted first. You know, the British Fashion Council, they were the first ones to respond to the letter and with such, like, what can we do? How
So
can we
this
fix
was
it?
when you wrote the letter to all the councils of the major fashion
That's right.
capitals, calling them out for not
Yes.
using any models of color.
Yeah. It was going well for a minute and then it would slip back a bit. It's going well for a minute. But by that time, I figured, you got it. Now you got to do, you put the last bullet in the gun. Now you got no choice because you've done it all nice from 2007 to 2013. It's been poco, little by little. And then they slide back a bit. So then you just saw and then you had to just explain it out. Go to the press with it, make it make sense to them, and name names.
Yeah.
And that just changed the game, I promise you. And they all responded so well, so fast. It's all those kind of things change through the industry little by little by little. You just don't know what's going to happen, but so far so good.
Can I ask you, if you fancy someone and you don't like something they're wearing, does it kill your attraction to them?
Yeah, I think you. Yeah, if you're attracted to someone and they have no style, yeah, the attraction is leaner.
That's a great description. Are there any specifics? Like Stefano Pilati said he couldn't bear those cut down socks, those sports socks and skinny jeans.
Well,
and
when you
Nestle
saw,
was so frisky that
Yeah.
he kind of got over it.
well, when you used to see some cute little, some cute white boys, and you saw in America, and you saw them with Birkenstocks when Birkenstocks weren't cool.
Yeah.
That was like, oh man, what you wearing? Yeah. Birkenstocks weren't cool at one point,
No.
and they would have little hairs on their toes. I'm sorry to get so descriptive, but that could make you go,
Oh,
okay,
my God.
next.
You have a particular kind of thing about Birkenstocks from my school when the teachers wore them and they were just so dowdy.
Oh yeah.
And everything was so dowdy. But even though now they're kind of cool, I have kind of like a conflict whenever I see one. The person has to be so dazzling, like some sort of
Yeah, they can make it cool.
God. Yeah.
Some people can really make something that's corny cool.
Yeah.
Because of the way they know how to throw a twist to it or do something to it. Yeah.
And that you were involved in the all-black issue of Italian Vogue. That was an amazing, the only issue that's ever been reprinted at all, I think. Is that correct?
3 times.
3 times. And did that change attitudes in the industry?
Oh, yes.
I mean,
it brought so many people
beautiful.
pride. I mean, Franco Zazani, God bless her. It was like I was having that press conferences in 2007, and the magazine came out in 2008. She asked me to, participate in it, even though they did a whole piece on me in the back of it. And I had her son, and her son did the pictures, and she gave us 10 pages to find new young Black girls to add to it.
Wow.
Just the idea that she believed so much that Blacks would sell. That was her way of trying to make a point.
Yeah.
And she always would say it. She would say, they're not racist, they're not racist. And I said, and then even though I say this now too, I would say, well, come on, Franca, sometimes you got to give it up. Some of them are a little. And she says, no, Bethann, no. And I went to work, and, afterwards I went to work with her for her, Vogue.it. She was the first one to ever go on the internet.
Really?
As a magazine. Yeah,
wow. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
she did. She was the
was
first one that
amazing.
did that, and she brought me on as an editor to do Vogue Black. It was called, and I did all the Black side, and they had a white girl do all the finding of models that were white and stuff. I did that part. Yeah, so it was, and in mine, of course, I made mine more special.
Of course,
mine was so good. I did so much great for the industry because I'd find these young Black kids coming up in the industry, and I'd interview them, and I have real real, filmmakers, shoot for me, and we take them outside. Where the other girl, the white girl in Milan, was just doing a, portrait in their studio. But I was taking it and making it more film-like.
God, that's
It was
great.
so good.
Yeah.
No, but it was really good what we had this opportunity at that time to have the Black issue come out because everyone loved it.
Yeah.
It just surprised people because it was so well done.
So
The
beautiful.
collaboration
Yeah.
with Stephen Meisel and all the girls who were already successful on the covers and the other girls. And it was just beautiful what she did.
I remember Vivienne Westwood saying that bankers were responsible for climate change. And I remember thinking, oh, God, that's ridiculous. And then she explained that it was because they reduced everything to a number. So it doesn't really mean anything. There's no emotional attachment and no inclination to feel accountable. And I wondered, do you think diversity has been co-opted in that way, racial diversity?
In what way? Say it again.
Well, that it's people take it and make it about numbers or a statistic, and then suddenly there's no reason to care about something.
Yeah. I'm thinking right now, I have faith or having some belief that I think that the advertising industry and the designers and the brands are enjoying and sincerely booking the models that they see.
Yeah.
Because I think they can see when they put it on these silhouette, they put the clothes on certain body types. West Africans, can easily compete with the Eastern European, when it comes down to body alignment. And I think when they put it on certain guys and everyone just doesn't see the color, but they see the art and the
Yeah.
physique. And that's why I'm proud of people that I helped too, like a Iman who came along, or a Cindy Bruna who came along.
Yeah.
And they have 10 years of still working as a model today. That's unusual for a girl of color.
Yeah. I remember seeing Naomi in the street when she was 16, and I was walking down Carnaby Street and I bumped into the stylist Kathy Castorine, and she was with this girl, and I said, who is that girl? Of course, I know.
She was cute.
Oh my gosh, she was just
She was
the
cute.
most enchanting.
She really was cute. I just found something. I came to meet her and her mom when she was 14 or 15. Right after, Beth Bolt is the one who called me and said, I have this girl. Because she, was discovered by Beth. And then she said, I have this girl I want you to see. I think you could take care of her better. Because she was young. And I was anybody who was good people in the industry. Well, there was a lot of good people then, but knew that I was that kind of person. And so I was really I went to meet her. I flew over to London to meet her and her mom and her stepfather. And I think she was 14 and a half, going into 15. And then she came to America at 16. And that's, we continued to bond.
Yeah.
But I didn't wind up representing her. But she stayed in my life. I stayed in her life. So she looks at me like her American mother, her mother sees it that way too. We stayed, but I looked at pictures the other day. There's a little roll on her. She was really cute. But I didn't think so much that she was then. I just thought she was a nice looking
God,
kid.
I thought she was the prettiest girl I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, and then she was successful and she just shot to the top.
And that on top of it.
Yeah.
Because she had something to give. She brought something. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've co-directed a documentary, Invisible Beauty, about your story. And you emphasize that this is your story, not your life. And what's the difference? What do you mean by that?
And I'm very happy you said that. There is a difference between my story and my life. I hear people saying, and this is the life of Bethann. Well, no, because it's not everything. It's not the life. It's a common thread of a story that connects the beginning to the end. And yet, to get to know who this person is, we show certain elements of the woman.
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit more who she is as we tell the story. But if there are things that I've done in life that it's not in the film that's pertinent.
Yeah.
And it doesn't show, it's not like focus on the life. It's focus on a story. It's a storyline. And that's what's so wonderful about it. But you do get to know more about me.
Yeah.
And how I did what no one knew how I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how.
That's great.
So that's what makes it.
And activism can be a lonely place. And I wondered, what art do you turn to rekindle the joy? Because you have so much joyousness about you.
Well, the good news about activism for me is that there's something right after called advocate. So for me, at some point, you have to really put your foot on the gas. That's activism. And then at some point, you have to know when you have to put your foot on the clutch and the gas. Then you start rolling back a little bit. Then you start putting your foot just on the clutch. Don't touch the gas. That's being an advocate. So for me, what I come to realize is that when people say, well, you're an activist, I said, well, not now. Mm-hmm. Because that's really, activism has to remain active. Mm-hmm. And that's a quote of mine that I've said often. That's an activist, someone who's constantly doing it. But when you stop from doing it and lean back, I like film. I'm right, I love going to the movies. I love, watching television. I love seeing series. I love seeing what someone creates in that kind of motion picture way. I wish I read more. I stopped reading in like maybe early 90s. But in the end of the day, I think that I know that I'm always going to be, if I need to be an activist again, that's when you have to get involved again, strongly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really understand what you mean. The momentum changes.
Yeah.
And where to focus changes. But, anyway, thank you so much, Bethann Hardison, for being on Fashion Neurosis. I learned a lot.
I am so happy you had me lay down here. Thank you. Can I go to sleep now?
You can stay forever.
Thank you, Bella, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.